There's never been a better time to have SiriusXM. With over 140 channels in your vehicle, your all-access trial includes more than ever before to enjoy online, on your phone, or at home. Create your own ad-free personalized stations powered by Pandora. Hear ad-free extra channels and enjoy favorite shows with Sirius Video on Demand. What you love is on now.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday and welcome back to CMA Connected. We took a little hiatus, of course, to make room for our training event that just concluded on the weekend. Of course, I'm talking about the CMA Fall Workshops. Hope you all had a chance to tune in and absorb some of this mind-blowing training sessions that all these amazing brands and distributors and retailers got together to create for you. So big shout out to those guys. Made an announcement on Facebook today. Of course, if you missed any of the Fall Workshop videos, they are now all available for viewing on demand. Yes, you can go back and watch every single one of them, grab your team organized, put a watch party together, get your learn on, everything from DSP to installation bay, lighting, ADAS, remote starters and source units, whatever have you. These guys did an amazing job to get the right information in your hands so you can be a more successful retailer this season. All right. Monday, we're back in full force. Of course, we've got CMA Connected 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And don't miss our CMA Live going down this Wednesday evening where we're talking about DSP. Yes, that's a topic we're talking about a lot. DSP, once again, it's part 2. That's going on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. You don't want to miss it. On to today's show. You know, I said the words DSP, and this brand, of course, is no stranger to that category. But let's get started. Let's go ahead and invite, representing Gemsen, my man Dave Singh. What's going on, Dave?
Hey Ben, how's it doing? How you doing today? I
am recovering from all this brain input from workshops this last week. That was a lot of information. I was one of the brave ones that actually sat through it all.
There's a lot of content there. I watched quite a few sessions there, and there was some, great information and a lot of really good feedback coming from the dealers, which was great to see.
And I think there's gonna be more because now we made it on demand, like I mentioned, and guys that didn't get a chance, because let's face it, it's busy out there right now. Like, it is busy. We had roundtable discussions every night. These guys are all crazy busy, but at the end of the day, the information is there. Hopefully everybody gets a chance to absorb it, and like I like to say, get their learn on.
Well, kudos to you guys for putting this together and allowing us to contribute and help everybody, improve their knowledge, educate them, and make themselves.
See what we're going to be talking about today.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Mr. Palumbo.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We were just talking about your session that we watched there during the workshops with you and Dean. I thought that was a really
that was fun.
Interesting effort.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a class that we had kind of, put together to try to take some of the mystery and the scariness out of DSP. I feel like there's a lot of dealers out there who, are almost kind of scared of it. But when they realize that it's actually just, 5 tools that we already use and have been using for years, all put in one box, it kind of simplifies things and hopefully takes some of the bite out of it. So.
Absolutely. I think you did a great job with that. So thumbs up for that, for putting that together for us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
All right. So, DSP, I mean, we're sort of touching on this today because from what I understand in the notes here, we're going to focus on a category which is big, really big when it comes to audio control. And I'm happy to do it because it feels like we haven't really had a chance to dive in to this depth. And that is the amplifier category because, I mean, there's many different series and offerings that we have. Dave, amplifiers and audio control, where do you sit with that?
Well, it's nice to see the offer from audio control be very different than what is normally out there. Certainly the industry didn't need just another amplifier. And when audio control came to the table, what they're offering, you could see that they put a lot of research and engineering behind what they thought the dealers needed to deal with today's vehicles. So as Matt goes through some of the different amplifiers, you'll see what you're going to learn is quite often all you need is a single one piece from audio control to get the job done. and you won't have to rely as much on external doodads, summing devices, line output converters, so on and so forth. You know, the mindset at AudioControl is let's build all that stuff into the amplifier and increase the overall value to the dealer, and certainly save time and money on all the extra little trinkets, wiring, all that other type of stuff that you need, you know, RCA cables to connect all these external devices to make it work. When it's all built into one amplifier, it makes life so much easier. So
it's really interesting that you
Absolutely.
say that. And here's my little comment before we get started. I had some time to think about our show today and look at, you know, what we're about to go over. You know, there's a lot of great amplifier brands out there, and there have been for many years. And they're amplifier brands. And you notice the trend in the last, let's call it 10 years, is integration. Like, how do you get these amplifiers into cars? So there's a whole bunch of great amplifier brands trying to figure out how to integrate into vehicles. Well, AudioControl kind of took the other reverse approach, whereby they've been integrating and having solutions for that for the longest time. And all they did now is take some of that amplifier technology and just mesh it together. So I thought that was a unique story there, whereby it makes this situation very unique. The integration part is not the part you have to worry about. That's rock solid. So now let's talk about, you know, how you made it that much better. So I'm going to give you the floor, Matt. How would you like to begin?
Awesome. So we're going to talk about all of the amplifiers. We've touched on, you know, a little bit of AudioControl power amplifiers in the past, but this time we are going to kind of go through the entire lineup. So what I want to do is just kind of show you guys a little bit about all of them. We'll try to touch on kind of all the strong points and you know, dive deep into a few details here and there. So with that, let's get started with our 2021 amp lineup. So everything that you're about to see today too is all current product, everything that is available, you know, and shipping now basically. So none of this is future wear or something that you can't get. This is all current stuff. So just want to make that clear. So the first thing I want to chat a little bit about is our ACM amplifier lineup. ACM stands for AudioControl Micro, and ACM was not designed because small amplifiers became popular or because every other brand out there made a small amplifier. ACM amps were developed because we wanted to make a small amplifier that actually sounded good. There's a lot of tiny amplifiers in this market, but unfortunately, a lot of those tiny amplifiers really don't sound very good. You know, they claim big power numbers, they claim all these things, but a lot of times the THD is really high, the power supply is not very well designed, and a lot of times they're just not great. You know, they're a compromise in a lot of brands lineups. The micro amps are like, well, we have these if you need them, you know, but even those brands a lot of times will tell you, if you can use a full-size amplifier, use a full-size amplifier. With AudioControl microamps, that's not the case. I mean, there's a perfectly good reason to use these in many applications, not just because space is tight. So we offer the ACM amps in 3 models. We have a 1-channel, a 4-channel, and a 2-channel. They're all a 300-watt amplifier, and physically, these are not very big. They're a little bit longer than a traditional LC2i, the original standard sized LC2i. You'll see that actually kind of float over there just like so. So you can see for size comparison, it's really only a couple inches bigger than a 2i. And there comes kind of the value proposition of these amplifiers is, you know, if you're a dealer and you're already going to put a single 10-inch woofer under the back seat of a Ford truck or a Dodge truck or, you know, whatever it is, if you're already planning to just do an efficient, kind of inexpensive 10-inch woofer, and you're going to put a 200, 300, 400-watt amplifier in there, and then you're also going to sell them an LC2i, why not just put in like an AudioControl ACM 1.300? Now you've got 300 watts RMS at 2 ohms, and just like everything AudioControl, these are actually quite a bit underrated, but we won't dive too much into that. But yeah, so you're going to have a solid 300 watts. You've got an LC2i built into this thing. So if you look at it from a value standpoint for the dealer and for the end consumer, now they're not having to buy, kind of like Dave touched on earlier, now we don't have to buy an LC2i and an amplifier and the RCAs to go in between and the labor to put both of those pieces in. We really have it just all in one. You know, it's all there. And when we say that an LC2i is built in, we literally mean everything an LC2I can do is built in. These amplifiers, just like all of our amplifiers, I'll touch on that right now, can accept up to 40 volts of high-level input. So that means that if you're working on one of these vehicles that has a premium sound system that has a factory amplifier, and you need to grab signal from that and or grab a speaker lead from that factory amp and use it as your signal, these products can handle it. They're not going to have any issue. You're not going to be overdriving the input stage or any of that weird stuff that can happen when using some other products out there. So not only does it have that great high-level input, it also does have AccuBass built in, which is the other thing that kind of makes the LC2I, that was kind of its claim to fame. Sorry, Ben, what were you going to say?
No, absolutely. And just something I wanted to touch on there is that there are a lot of small amplifiers that say they have high-level converters built in, but I would encourage you guys to check the spec, because that feature might be just absolutely useless to you. So don't use it as a selling point unless you actually check the specifications. And I'm not saying they're all like that, but that's certainly a point that should be noted.
No, that's going to be my new catchphrase there, is check the spec, because it couldn't be more true. Like, you'll see these amplifiers out there where their high-level input can only take 10 volts, so what good is that? Like, I mean, 10 volts is nothing in this world. So, it's definitely something to keep in mind.
That's Dave Singh showing off the size. Really, there's his hand, and he's not, well, unless has gargantuan hands, but I don't think so. I think he's got human-sized hands. There's a pen. It is not a big footprint right there.
No, it's really not. And they are all physically the same size chassis, so they look great in an amp rack. They look great next to each other. Installer friendly, and when I say installer friendly, we have some really cool features. So one of those is, as he flips that around, you'll see it has 4-gauge inputs. So even though these are 300-watt amplifiers, we have a 4-gauge input. Why do we have a 4-gauge input? Sure, it would be great to feed 4-gauge into every 300-watt amp. Is it necessary? Probably not. But what we try to do is really make these amplifiers a stepping stone amp. So if your customer is coming in today and they're getting an ACM 1.300 and you're installing that for them as part of a base package, that's awesome. But when they come back later and they want to add, say, a 4-channel amplifier and replace all their door speakers, if you've already ran 4-gauge to that mono, you can put in a distribution block easily and now feed 8-gauge to each amp, and you've still got plenty of power to run both those amplifiers. All of these amps are fused at 30 amps. So, I mean, a 4-gauge run could technically run all 3 of these amplifiers if you wanted to do one of each. So you've got some really cool options there. One of my other favorite parts is, like Dave showed it there, the top cover plate of these amplifiers. I don't have it shown on my slide, but Dave's model there in his hands has that top cover plate. And that cover plate actually will not only hide all of the screws and controls, I should say, and dials and settings and all that stuff. It also does hide like the power LED. Everything is completely hidden under that top plate. So once that's installed, it's literally just a little black box, making it very kind of OEM looking. You can even take the top cover plate and flip it over and mount it upside down so that it can be totally just black. If you don't even want it to say, AudioControl on it, you can do that. I have lots of dealers that laser etch those with their company logo. So they want to do kind of like their own thing on there, that you can do that. The top cover plate can be mounted upside down. It can be mounted on the back side of the amplifier as well. So if you need to do like a quick flush mount job and make it look custom, even though it's just a basic deal, we've really put a lot of thought and energy into those. So with the 3 different models, again, our big thing with the ACMs is that these are a building block. We know that a lot of customers cannot come into your store today and afford to spend all the money to get a full system with DSP and component speakers and all these things. A lot of them can only afford to do it in chunks, and that's fine. So let's give them a way to do that. And normally when we do that for customers, I feel like they end up with kind of entry-level gear, and they end up replacing it later and this and that. In this case, we're giving them an option to get something from a nicer brand with a nice 5-year warranty when it's installed by a dealer, and something that's of really nice quality without having to sacrifice because they're just doing it in steps. When I talk about quality and things too, I mean, these have a super high signal to noise ratio, 0.001% THD. Like, these are really clean, basically sound quality micro amps. I talked about being able to do building blocks and kind of mount them and things like that. We actually have a top cover plate that we still offer that allows you to take, say, a 1-channel and a 5-channel, and if you mount them back to back with the leads coming out the top and bottom, we can put that cover plate over there and kind of build your own 5-channel. It's a really simple, small, kind of silly thing, but giving the customer the ability to literally come in and build that. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, back up. What did you? I'm trying to understand what you're saying here. Are those 2 amps under the one on the left?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry, I was just wanting to make sure that's clear. So you're taking a plate, putting 2 amps together to make it look like a custom 1 chassis multi-channel amp.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay.
So now your customer can come in, buy that mono and a subwoofer, because let's face it, most customers start with bass. So they're going to buy the mono, you're going to put in a subwoofer, and if you're a good dealer and you're doing your job correctly, which you should be, then that customer is going to be so happy with it that they're going to come back in 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever, and they're going to want to up the rest of the system. And so when they go to add that 4-channel amplifier, you could even physically make it look like a 5-channel amp, like I'm showing a second ago. Now, one of the other cool things about that is if you did want to take this customer and go even one step further, you can actually even add a DSP to this system. So if you take the 1-channel, you add the 4-channel and a DM608, you can stack them all together and you can actually kind of build your own 5-channel DSP amplifier setup.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was not aware of this.
Again, not revolutionary, right? It's pretty simple. We're just stacking product here, but it's very cool, and giving guys the ability to do that is pretty neat.
Interesting. And that doesn't affect the cooling of any kind as far as the DSP on the bottom is concerned or anything like that. Okay.
No, sir. The DSPs really don't require much in the way of heat dissipation, so that is why we generally stack them on the bottom as well. That way the amps have the most, airflow, so to speak. But not a problem at all. So this is a popular way to go, being able to stack these all up, and again, allowing your customer to start with the basics, just adding bass. Add a 4-channel, now you've got a 5-channel system, and hey, let's go DSP. Add a DM608, you've got a DSP in there, and you're able to fit all of that under the front, passenger seat of many modern vehicles. I think that's pretty cool, not having to buy it all at once and being able to do that. So some pretty neat features. One more thing I'll mention on the ACM lineup before we wrap up the ACMs is they are conformally coded PC boards. So although we don't rate them with an IP rating, they are not meant as a motorsports or power sports product. We're going to get into those in a minute, but they are built in such a way that they can handle the vibration and the moisture of, say, being in the fairing of a Harley motorcycle or being in the saddlebags of a bike or something like that. Now, I wouldn't get them, actually wet. I wouldn't hose them off or anything, but if they were in the fairing where they're just going to experience maybe some environmental moisture and things like that, I don't see any problem with that at all. We have a lot of dealers who do really well with the ACM amplifiers in fairing and saddlebag installs on motorcycles. Or if you're looking to, put them up in the dash of a Jeep or something like that, they're great for those types of applications. So moving on to some products that is actually something that is designed to get wet and muddy and, more of our what we call all-weather lineup. We don't want these pigeonholed as just power sports or motorsports products, so we call them ACX, which is AudioControl all-weather is our lineup for these is the designation. That's what we call them. So with the all-weather line, we don't want people to just think of these as, oh, they're for boats. Or, oh, they're for side-by-sides. Sure, they are. They're great for boats and side-by-sides, but also think of them for Jeeps and, off-road vehicles and jet skis and golf carts and riding lawnmowers and, 1990 Honda Accords with leaky trunks. Anything that's going to get wet or experience some environment, these are a great option. And so, to be clear, these are not the same thing as an ACM. These are not just an ACM amplifier in a different chassis. These are actually designed from the ground up to be their own lineup. So in the ACX lineup, we have 2 amplifier models currently. We have the 300.4. This is a 4-channel amplifier. It is bridgeable to 2 channels if you want to, and they are IPX6 rated. So whereas lots of companies will call their product marine, we actually did have these certified, and they are IPX6, which means, if you're not sure what those designations mean, IPX6 actually means that these can withstand 30 minutes of high pressure water spray directly on the product. So these could be pressure washed. These could be hosed off. If these are in an exposed install, that's not a problem. If you're going to bury them in the dash of a Polaris Razor or a Can-Am or whatever side by side, no problem. Sand, mud, dirt, snow, ice, water, whatever, the ACX amps can really handle it. And they dish out some power. These are very nice sounding amplifiers. So with the ACX line, one of the other things that I like to mention is kind of like I talked about with the ACMs earlier, is with the ACX, these were not just created because, oh, everybody's doing all-weather amps, we better hop on that bandwagon. No, we wanted to make an all-weather amplifier, again, that actually sounds good. There is not really anybody out there doing a sound quality all-weather or powersports amplifier at the time when we designed these. So we wanted to make an amp that was super low THD, super high signal to noise ratio, sounded really good, had great power output, but also was uber efficient. And when we're talking about powersports vehicles, that's what's important. You can have all the power in the world, but if it draws too much current, it's not going to do anybody any good because it's never going to work on a golf cart or a jet ski or, something like that. And so you need that minimal current draw, high efficiency type design when we're talking about power sports. These only have, I think, a 10 gauge or 8 gauge input on them because that's really all they need. You're not going to need to feed 4 gauge or anything like that to these amps because they don't consume that much current. So they were really designed from the ground up with a special power supply and everything for this environment. One of my favorite things with the ACX lineup is the connectors. Both on the ACX 300.4 and the ACX 300.1, this is the mono version, we have a really cool setup on these, and maybe we can flip to that camera there, the product cam. So on these amplifiers, there are these permanently connected leads because they are a truly waterproof design. But what's unique is those connectors. Those are a Molex waterproof connector, and we do, of course, include a pigtail to plug into those. But more importantly, for my guys that are a little bit more on the custom side of things, is we also include a raw male connector to plug directly into that power plug. So if you don't want to use that little pigtail that Dave just set down, we also give you just the gray end. So if you want to pin your own power and ground and go straight from there to the battery, you can do that. Of course, the least amount of connection points is going to mean less resistance. It's going to mean a longer lasting, better install. So we really wanted to make sure to give guys the opportunity to pin that themselves. Now, if they're not capable, they're not confident, or they don't want to, don't have time, whatever, that's fine. We also do give you the pigtail that you can just crimp or preferably solder and heat shrink onto. So at the end of the day, no matter which way you go, you're going to have an install that is serviceable. It is removable if you had to. If you're putting this amp on the saddlebag of a Harley, what if they need to take off that saddlebag? How are they going to disconnect that amplifier? Well, we've got quick disconnects in there for you. So we really tried to make sure that everything in there was disconnectable. Basically, I took my experience as an installer of, I installed for like 8 years. I took my experience from the Bay and went, okay, what would I want in this amplifier if I was putting it in? And one of the things that really used to bother me when I would put in other companies' power sports amps, and that was one of the things that always drove me nuts. One of the other things that used to drive me nuts, and I won't name any names, but this amplifier has all of your controls right on top. So you can access the gain and crossover and everything. Once it's installed, all your controls are right there on top. You're not going to have to unmount it and get at the bottom of it or anything like that. So if you ever get a chance to check these out in person, guys, these are built like a tank. You take them out of the box and go, wow, this thing feels like it was really well made, because it is. So anyhow, pretty cool stuff in the ACX lineup. We're talking amplifiers today, so I won't dive too far into it.
I do have one question, Matt. One question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I know in the previous session when we were talking about these, when these first came out, you had mentioned that this could be a solution for those situations where you don't have a source unit.
Absolutely.
Could you just touch on that real quick? Because I think, with how rugged this is and how small it is, with the sound quality we can get out of this, I think we talk that's a nice solution for people who have that conundrum.
Absolutely. And so you know, what most of the time we're going to use in that scenario is probably an ACX 300.4, the 4-channel model. And we can do a couple of things. If you just have maybe a really simple system, maybe it's a golf cart or whatever, or a classic car or something like that, we could bridge this to a pair of speakers, get 150 watts per channel at 4 ohms, so have lots of power and have a really nice sounding system. But we've built some things in there to make this even easier, and that is we have a 2-channel, 4-channel switch. So if you can only send in 2 channels of audio into this thing, that's okay. It'll still give you all 4 channels of output. We've also done some things like build in an auto turn on feature. So again, maybe you don't have a head unit, or maybe it's a OEM integration situation, or whatever the case may be. You can use this GTO feature built in to turn itself on, so you don't have to go find a remote turn on signal. And even above that, I'm going to back up a slide here. You can see off to the left on that leftmost picture, there's a little Bluetooth adapter sitting there. We were talking amplifiers today, so I didn't dive deep into this, but we do offer a piece called the ACX BT1, and that is our standalone Bluetooth receiver. It plugs straight into an ACX 300.4, and it's going to give you high-res Bluetooth streaming audio. It's an IPX rated product, so it can get wet too. And my favorite part is it's got a higher preamp output voltage than most of all the other Bluetooth pieces out there. I say most because there are always exceptions. But one of my favorite features as a previous tech is that the BT1, the little Bluetooth adapter, has a remote turn on output. So you can plug in that BT1 into our 300.4, pair up your phone to it, and nothing happens. But when you hit play on a song, as soon as you hit play, it turns on that amplifier downstream for you. So you don't have to put in a switch. You don't have to find remote turn on. You don't have to find a switched power source at all. As long as we've got a battery and some speakers, we can make a sound system in that vehicle. I don't care what it is.
So this is a perfect drop-in, no required selectable switch, just for the sound system. No source unit required. Bluetooth on your phone.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yep. Bluetooth straight in.
I think that's so clutch for a lot of applications when it comes to this category. You know what I mean? And does that work on all of them, even the 2-channel?
Yeah. So if you were using like the ACM 2-channel, you mean? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep. Yeah. You could use it with literally anything with an RCA input. That little Bluetooth device could work with any RCA input device.
Any RCA input, and use that as a remote turn on from there.
Exactly. Yep, you got it. So pretty cool stuff. So that wraps up the ACX lineup for us today. Look for us in the future to expand this line to some more models. That's all I can say for right now, but just keep your eyes peeled for the future. So let's talk about my favorite series of amplifiers. And I say my favorite because I think they are some of the most unique amplifiers in the marketplace, and I can say that with the utmost confidence. The LC series of amplifiers are exactly what they sound like. You may be familiar with our LC2i or LC6i, 7i, 8i, whatever. Well, LC generally stands for line converter. That's what the LC and LC2i stands for, right? So the LC series of amplifiers, some of your gears are already turning and you're picking this up. These have LC product built inside. So when you look at something like a LC 4.800, an LC 4.800, although it's a 4-channel amplifier, actually has 6 channels of high-level input. We'll dig more into that here in a minute. The LC 6.1200, 6-channel, 1200-watt amplifier, has 8 channels of high-level input. Our LC 5.1300, 5-channel amplifier, 1300 watts RMS, that thing's a beast. Has 8 channels of high-level input on a 5-channel amplifier. So what do we need all those inputs for? What are we doing with that, right? We are using those inputs to do signal summing most of the time. So if you guys are running into these vehicles, and I know that you are because they're becoming more and more common, even in lower end vehicles or even in older vehicles now, is systems that have factory separates or factory, component or active systems. So if you're working on a vehicle and let's just say its channel setup is like, highs, tweeters in the top dash, mid ranges in the front doors, maybe rear fill in the back doors, and a factory subwoofer. Okay. So if you're going to take that car and you look at all those signals and go, wow, none of these are full range. I can't use any of these signals to do this whole system. I'm going to have to do signal summing. Traditionally, you would go grab an LC7i, or you'd grab a DSP, or you'd grab an LC8i, or whatever, and you'd bring all those signals in, and you'd kind of smash them all together, do some summing, and try to get yourself some full range, and that's fine. It works okay. But wouldn't it be nice if you could just put in just an amplifier and be done with it? Like you could do just a 6-channel amplifier from AudioControl, have all of that stuff built in, and be able to do literally everything in one product. So now you've got a 1200 watt 6-channel amp, you've got an LC8i built inside of it, and away you go. You can do your signal summing, you can do absolutely everything in there all in one shot. So you don't need extra parts, you don't need anything extra at that point, right?
One chassis.
So there's really a lot that you can do with that. Yeah, one chassis. So when you're doing something like that, I mean, you can go and, take that high frequency from the dash, take that lows from the front door, mash those together for summing. But then we can also bring in those rear signals. And maybe we're just bringing in the rears just so that we can maintain fader. That's fine. We can do that. Maybe we're bringing in factory subwoofer just so that we can maintain, factory sub control in a Honda or Acura. We can do that. So there's a lot of cool things that we can do when we're bringing in all those factory signals, whereas a lot of guys will just find anything that's full range in a car, bring that in for their signal and go, okay, cool, it works. But your customer lost fader, they lost factory sub control, they lost some features sometimes. We don't always have to do that. So one of the things you'll notice too when you're looking at your screen and seeing those specs is these are not shy on power. I mean, 125 watts per channel is a lot of power. RMS at 4 ohm, up to 200 watts per channel at 2 ohm. It is a ton of power output. Not to mention, let's say you do all your signal summing inside this amplifier. Okay, great. You've done all your summing. You've got yourself full range signal. But what about my subwoofer? I still need to get signal to that. These LC amplifiers, the 4-channel and 6-channel, even have an RCA output. So although you've done all your signal summing, we don't want to trap that sum signal inside this amplifier. We still may need to get that signal over to our sub amp. That's okay. We have an RCA output to do that. So you can just run a short, 12-inch RCA from this amp over to your sub amp, and you're done. Now you've got a signal summing device, you've got a 6-channel amplifier and a subwoofer amplifier if you need it, and you're all set. Now you can absolutely run this LC612 as a 5-channel too. I get that question a lot. Can I bridge the channels? Yes, you can. You can bridge all of the channels or one of the, however you want.
Independently bridge, yep.
Yes, it's 400 watts bridged at 4 ohm. So you could run this as 400 watts times 3 if you wanted to. Or you could run it as, 125 times 4 plus 400 by 1 if that's what you wanted to do.
I would totally just order 2 of these and run my 3-way up front.
Right? Yeah, 400 watts by 6 at that point. I'm in, man. I like your style, man.
That's the way to do it.
So some cool stuff there. The LC5 is very popular. We launched this one. I think it started shipping early in the summer. Sounds about right to me. And this has been so popular since it started shipping. This thing is a monster. 1,300 watts RMS. So and again, AudioControl loves to underrate our product. We could probably call that 5th channel, more like a 700 or 800 watt 5th channel, but we tend to go on the conservative side. So we're going to call it 500. But you've got a lot of power there. Even at 4 ohm, 100 times 4 plus 300 by 1, nothing to sneeze at. But you get 2 ohms on that sub channel and you are going to see your sub really wake up. It's a lot of power. And again, 8 channels of high level input on this thing too. So we can bring in, this is a perfect example, in some of these cars that have those factory separates. You could bring in a high, mid, and low. Let's say your car has factory 3-way active components in the front and you're going to go a different direction. Fine. We can bring in a high, mid-range, and low frequency signal, combine them all together, and bring in the factory subwoofer signal and combine that in there if we need to, or keep it separate. And we can really have full range output. We can maintain, you could have the factory sub control on the dash of I know Honda and Acura does it a lot. So let's say your Acura or Honda has factory subwoofer level. That factory sub level could now control the 5th channel of this amplifier. So we can maintain some really cool features for your customer. Or maybe you've got one of those cars where, it has different things that come out of the center channel, phone or navigation prompts or something like that. We can bring those channels in as well. So we've got a lot of options, and I'll touch a little bit more on those options here in a second. But I want to talk about the 4-channel version as well, the LC4800. This is one of the first ones we came out with in that lineup. This is a super popular amplifier. It makes a great 3-channel. If you want 125 by 2 plus 400 by 1, this is an awesome amplifier for doing, small cars, Mazda MX-5 Miatas, Honda S2000s, any of those little two-door sports car type vehicles, little roadsters. This is a great amp for those vehicles because it's physically a little bit smaller than the 5 and 6 channel. Fits great under most car seats, but it's going to give you plenty of power to build whatever system it is in there that you're looking for. And again, 4-channel amplifier, but you've got 6 channels of high-level input. Or it's, of course, got low-level input too. Remember that piece Ben and I were talking about, that ACX BT1, that Bluetooth adapter. Pair up that Bluetooth adapter with this 4-channel, and now you've got a Bluetooth 4 or 3-channel, let's say, set up in your classic car. Maybe the classic car just needs a pair of 6x9s and a subwoofer, or 6.5s and a subwoofer. Great. An LC4800 with a Bluetooth chip, you're set. That's going to be a great sounding system.
Very, very nice. I know Dave has the product right there. I want to go ahead and show the details.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the monoblock, I would imagine.
Yep, so that's the 1.800, and we'll touch a little bit more on the monos here in a few minutes. But just for size reference, that is the same size as our 4-channel. So we'll come back to that 1.800 here in a moment as well. But yeah, for size reference, I mean, you look at that next to that pen, that thing's not very big considering the type of power that is packed in that guy.
Considering arguably like 1/5 of that chassis is heating fins, or cooling fins rather. That's a pretty compact package for that type of power.
It really is. And these also have a top cover plate for those of you wondering. Once that top cover plate is on, it is a unique cover plate. So it does actually hide all of the, hide all of the connection points. It hides all of the controls, all of the, power LED and protection lights and all of that stuff, as well as all those gains and crossovers and all those things that, really, let's face it, we may not. Yeah, and sometimes we may not want customers getting at some of that stuff, or at least maybe not making it easy for them.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So that cover plate certainly comes in handy for that too.
It reminds me of the protectors I put on my kitchen cabinets and then the plugs in the kitchen.
Exactly. There you go. Same idea. I love that. So, one of the things I talked about a little bit is that front high input. And just to kind of clarify what I mean by this built-in summing and how does that work? So a lot of guys are looking at this going, okay, it has summing, but how do you do summing when there's no software? How do you do summing when there's no interface? Like, how does this work, right? And basically the way that this plays out is there is a dial on the top of these amplifiers, all the LC amps, and it says front high level. And what you're actually able to do is you're able to take the front high input, which is a separate pair of inputs, and basically mix it with the front input. So let's use this example. You have high frequencies only coming from the top dash speakers. We have low frequencies only coming from the factory front door speakers. So let's say you tap into that top dash and go, oh, cool, hopefully these are full range. Oh, man, they're not. They're highs only. Okay, let me check the front doors. They're low frequencies only. You can't use either of those signals to run the system. It's not going to sound good. You're either going to have no highs or no lows. So neither of those are going to work. We need to basically combine them to get full range. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to do summing. So when I sum those together using something like, say, an LC7i, really popular piece, you are basically just going to take 50% of signal A and 50% of signal B and smash them together. And that's going to be your result, which is okay. But it isn't always the perfect result. Sometimes you end up wishing that you had a little bit more control. So with the LC series amplifiers, what's nice is it's not just a switch you flip and say, hey, combine these. It's a mixer. So you're actually saying how much of the top dash signal do I want mixed into the front door signal? And maybe it's only a little bit. Maybe I only need to bring in, 30% or 20% of that top dash in order to achieve full range. Okay, great. I can do that. I can just turn that dial a little bit. Now, if you have an RTA, you can nail this and get it 100%. If you don't have an RTA, you can still do this by ear and get it remarkably close and probably be, good enough for most installations. So it's a really easy way to do summing. It's probably the easiest way most people have ever done signal summing before. So it really does make a huge difference. One of my other favorite things about that front high input is that you can do so many other cool things with it. If you have a vehicle that has like the door chimes coming through a certain channel in this vehicle, let's say they come out of the front door speakers. Well, then in that instance, I would bring the front doors into front high, and I would dumb down that input a little bit using that front high level. And I would do that so that I'm not getting that annoying amplified chime. If you've ever taken a vehicle with chimes and amplified it, those chimes can get ungodly loud. So if you bring that into this special input and back it down a little bit, you'll still get the signal you need from it, but we can back it down so that the chimes aren't so annoying. Or maybe, you know, you have a vehicle that has factory navigation or Bluetooth phone call audio that only comes out of the center channel. Okay, well, in most of our aftermarket installs, we are kind of nixing or ditching that center channel, and we're just going stereo in a lot of these vehicles, which is fine. But what if the information on that center channel isn't anywhere else? What if there's audio information or navigation prompts or Bluetooth phone calls that only come out of that center channel? What are you going to do? If you leave it hooked up to the factory system, the volumes are going to be different, right? That's going to be goofy. So if we bring that center channel, we snip that lead, and we bring that center channel speaker wire into this front high input, now I can snag the audio information from that channel, bring it into my amplifier, and use it. Now their Bluetooth phone calls will come out of all the speakers. Now their navigation prompts will come out of all the speakers, and it'll be at the level that you've set with that front high level mixer. Same thing if you're doing custom radar or laser, installed systems. If you have an output from one of those Escort or K40 or Redenzo systems, you can feed that into that front high level input and, you know, adjust how much of that you want mixed in there. And now every time they get a radar or laser alert, it's actually going to come out of the whole vehicle, which is great for your
instead of blasting
convertible
you in the middle
Ferrari
of a
or
song
whatever.
when you're cruising down the highway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're doing, 120 down the freeway in your Ferrari, we're going to want that laser alert or KA band alert to really come at me. But the nice thing is with that mixer, again, you can adjust how much of that, maybe we only want 5% of our signal to be from this radar system. Okay, great. At least we'll have it coming through the speakers and be able to hear it. So there's a million different inputs or a million different reasons and ways to use that input. These are just a few different examples. But I think it really gets guys kind of, gears turning on, oh, yeah, I could use that for a lot of cool things. So there's a lot we can do with that front high level input. Okay. So one of the last things I wanted to touch on was our D series amplifiers before we get into sub amps. Since I know we're going to be running out of time pretty soon here. So the D series amplifiers, you guys, are essentially just like our LC series amplifiers. They are the same channel counts. They're the same physical size, same physical chassis. They're the same layout, same everything. However, you'll notice when you're looking at these physically, there's no dials, there's no switches, there's no knobs. They are all digital, which means they're DSP amplifiers. So anything in our lineup that starts with the letter D means it uses the DM Smart DSP app. So it's a free app you either put on your smartphone, Android or iPhone, your tablet, iPad or Android tablet, or on your laptop, whether that be a Mac or a PC laptop. So we are brand agnostic. Yes, we work with Macs.
That makes you very unique because there's not a whole lot of interfaces that run on Mac OS.
I know, and I'm an Apple guy myself. I'm doing this presentation from my MacBook right now, and I would be pretty bummed if we couldn't run our DSP software on my MacBook. So I was thrilled that we've got that working. So so the app is free, and the cool part is, guys, is it looks exactly the same, whether it's ran on a laptop, iPad, a phone. It's just scaled for size. So whereas with some other manufacturers, you get all the options on a laptop, but you only get half the options if you're doing it from a smartphone, we give you everything regardless of which device you're using. Because sometimes, I wouldn't recommend setting up these amplifiers from a little tiny smartphone screen. But hey, if it's 5 p.m., the shop's about to close, and you're running out of options and your laptop's not working, then I'm glad we have the option for you to, in a pinch, at least fire up your smartphone, get this thing configured, and get this customer on their way and make them happy. Nothing's worse than holding up an install because, hey, my laptop doesn't work, I couldn't get logged into your amplifier, blah, blah, blah. It's nice to be able to at least be able to do that. So some cool stuff there. So with these D series amplifiers, like I said, the power ratings are there, but they are the same power ratings as the LC series. It is identical. One of the things that does make the D series amps unique is, physically speaking, all of the D-series amplifiers not only have their amplified channels internally, they also have 2 channels of DSP output that is non-amplified. So there's an additional set of RCA outputs on all of these amplifiers that are just DSP out. So if you are doing, say, our D6.1200, you're doing an active front 3-way setup, mid-bass, mid-range, tweeter. Okay, great. What about the rears? What about the subwoofer? What about, that other amplifier? Do I have to buy a DSP sub amp as well? Do I have to buy a DSP 2 channel for my rears? How am I going to do that? You don't have to. With our amplifiers, you can take that DSP RCA output, feed that to a non-DSP amplifier, and now you can DSP both amps from one software, one interface, and do it all in one place. So it makes a lot of sense.
And isn't it interesting that the chassis aesthetically looks similar to match?
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Isn't that interesting? It's as if that was intentional.
Yeah, strange. So, when you dive into our software too, the DM Smart DSP software is really simple. And I don't have to say that because I work for AudioControl. I say that because as a store manager for 7 years and as a technician for 8 years, I have dealt with, installed, played with, tuned most of the DSPs in the market. Okay, I'm not going to say every single one, but most of them. And I can confidently say that this software is literally some of the easiest out there. I teach guys, my job as our national trainer is to teach guys how to use this stuff, right? And be successful with it. And if I can teach somebody across the country how to go through this software and make a car sound good and get it out the door in about 20 to 30 minutes, that means it's pretty easy, right? If it was complicated, I'd never be able to do that. I always tell guys, actually, once they're proficient with our software, which doesn't take any time at all, by the second or third car you do, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I got this, no problem. Even after the first car, you're going to be like, oh, this is easy. So after that second or third car, you're really confident with it, let's say, you should be able, once the physical installation is done, all the wiring's done, everything's finished, it's physically installed. Once we plug in with that USB port and we dive into this software, it should not take you more than 20 to 30 minutes to set up and tune a vehicle and get it out the door. And that's a bold statement, I know, because there's lots of guys out there that do DSP that are spending 3 or 4 hours setting up and tuning these cars. And I get that if you're trying to win IASCA World Finals. If it's a $20,000 install, by all means, man, spend 4 hours tuning it. But the truth of the matter is that I feel the majority of our installations out there are everyday basic stuff where we're just trying to make cars sound good, get them on the road, and get them on their way, right? I mean, we aren't winning IASCA World Finals with every car that comes through the door. And of course, we want them to sound good, and we want these cars to make our customers happy and exceed their expectations. But it doesn't take 4 hours of tuning to do that. It should take about 30 minutes of tuning to do that, truthfully. So if you watching this are like, man, every time we do a DSP, spend 2.5 hours messing with it, then you're using the wrong DSP. The software is too hard. That's all there is to it. It's too much. Maybe you don't need all that stuff. This is very, very easy. It still does all of the features that 99% of your installations are going to need. It's not a bad way to go. So anyhow, I'm not going to dive too deep into the software today because that's not what today's about. Today's about amplifiers. But I do want to recommend that if you've never done one, order one of these from Gemsen, give them a shot, and you will be surprised at how simple these really are.
All right. Very cool.
So one last thing.
I might have to hit you up on a live demo of that one time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. One last thing I did want to touch on is the LC sub amplifiers. So we do have a LC 1-800, which I think Dave has there in his hands, and LC 1.1500. So these are heavily underrated as well. Really powerful, nice sub amplifiers. And again, just like everything AudioControl does, these are really nice quality, nice sounding amplifiers. High dampening factor, high signal noise ratio, low THD, super high efficiency. Even our 1500 watt mono has like an 80% efficiency rating, which, if you know anything about amplifiers, is a very high rating for a mono sub amp. And both of these, if you didn't catch it earlier, have an LC2I inside. Literally, these are an LC2I inside of these amplifiers.
Oh, even for the sub amp?
Absolutely. Yep. So these will take in 40 volts of high level input. These have AccuBass built in. You can plug in an ACR1 bass knob. these are an LC2I with an 800 watt or 1500 watt amplifier attached. So you have everything that you need to do a great sounding bass or subwoofer setup, all there. It's all right there. So the LC1800 has 4-gauge inputs. The LC1500 has 1-aught power inputs, power and ground. So yeah, that 1500 is very commonly tested at around 18 to 1900 watts. So it is heavily underrated, but that's the way we'd rather play it. You know, we'd rather call our 800 an 800 watt amp when really it does, 900 to 1000. We'd much rather just call it an 800 and have our customers just be blown away. So
you should have a t-shirt.
Really,
I got an idea for a t-shirt. I got an idea for a t-shirt, man.
I'm all ears.
Underrating is our jam. That's the t-shirt.
I like it. I like it. So, so yeah, that pretty much wraps up the amplifier lineup. I mean, yeah, so there's an LC2I built into all of them essentially as far as the sub amps go. Oh no, you're good.
We're good.
I can jump back. I was just gonna say, yeah, you got a LC2I built into all 3 of our mono sub amplifiers, just to kind of reiterate that. But otherwise, yeah, that's it, guys. That was the entire 2021 amp lineup.
Couple comments I want to share on the screen here of viewers chiming in. So I played earlier that the Renner has been enjoying having AudioControl products in his inventory and has had great results with it. And these look amazing. Archie speaks, I'd love to know more about the software. That would be great. Dave, take that note. We might have to circle back with a software deal so people can see what that's all about. Here's another comment. I use LC2I Pro kits all the time for OEM integration. And when he saw the last unit, he said, "That's insane. I need those." So that's it.
Well, they are all readily available. Jemson is your source, so make sure to get with them and get you any audio control gear you need.
Dave, I'm gonna give you the mic, man. You were doing the Vanna White thing this whole time. Any thoughts on that whole presentation?
Well, poor Matthew, man, I hope you got a glass of water there because you were
murdering it.
Yeah, lots of information there for sure. I got nothing else I can really add. Matt did a really good job, explaining feature for feature what these amplifiers have. But one of the important things that I think AudioControl brings to the table is confidence. And by having that confidence, they offer one of the best warranties in the industry, being 5 years. So
very good point, Dave. Yeah.
Should there ever be an issue, you've got the protection of a 5-year warranty to back you up. And when we were going through the ACX amplifiers, and I was showing a comparison of the ACM 1300 and the ACX. That's not just a regular amplifier that they repurposed. So they've really gone to the full extent to make sure that they do have purpose-built product engineered specifically for specific tasks. So great team at AudioControl, and we're happy to be the Canadian distributor.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to also point out was, man, these products are, I'm going to try to use the right terminology here, are assembled in the USA.
There you go. Designed, engineered, assembled, and tested. All of that happens in the US.
All that great technical jargon. At the end of the day, this is not purchased over, offshore and just slap the logo on. No, everything is designed and put together here, right? And for me, that's a lot of value. So I wanted to mention that for sure.
Yeah, especially on like the DSP products, the one that people don't always understand is we actually program and test and listen to, with a real human being with headphones on, listen to every single one of those D series products in-house. Every one of them is done in Seattle. That DSP board is put in and programmed and tested and listened to by an actual human, every single one. Not grab out one out of every 10 or this and that. Every single one of those has to be tested and listened to before it goes out the door. So especially with that D series of product, I mean, it's a higher tier, higher end product. We absolutely make sure every one of those is hand tested and listened to. It's pretty cool.
This gentleman, Renner, I'm guessing is a gentleman, says the Jemson is the source for this product, and I thought this was a cool comment. Just use the ACX 300 before on a new 21 C-Do, and it works amazing. So there's some testimonial.
That's so cool to hear. I love it. I love it.
There you go. Man, that's a wrap. That's crazy how fast that went. But Matt, always,
I know, right?
Pleasure having your expertise on the board with us. Obviously, you did a great overview of everything and super wealth of knowledge. That's for sure. And
Thanks,
make sure to check out Matt. He did a great session, audio control, of course, with Dean from 5-Star during the workshops this week. If you go into the on-demand section, you'll be able to catch that. And that's certainly something you don't want to miss. So,
yeah, if you saw something about the software there that you had questions about, or like, oh, that software does look easy, tell me more about that. Dean and I really dive pretty deep into every aspect of that software in that training. So make sure to check that out if you didn't get a chance to see it yet.
Absolutely.
Other than that, I just want to thank you guys for having me on, and thanks for giving me your time.
Well, we'll see you soon enough. I think we have you scheduled in for a future CMA Live on OEM integration, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think so.
We'll
so
circle back
looking
with
forward
you
to it.
Max,
all right,
go
thanks so
away.
much, guys.
I'll see you in the back studio if you want to hang out for a second. Thank you.
All right, have a great day.
All right. Mr. Singh, mission accomplished. Amplifiers.
Great session. Certainly not enough time to talk about everything, but enough time to kind of touch upon the important points.
Let's just review. We have so audio control. They have the series with the small footprint. Then they have the ACM, and then they have the all-weather series, which is tough as nails.
ACX.
Then they have the line, the LC series that has the the line.
Well, you got multi-channel amplifiers. You got 4 channels, 5 channels, 6-channel amplifiers there, and then mono blocks as well in the LC series.
Right, and then the DSP integrated series. Correct,
the D series amplifier. So, there's basically something for every budget and every application that you can think of. And I love the little things that they've thought of, like the adjustability for these warning chimes and all that other type of stuff. Like that's stuff that you don't see, and it's an annoying thing to deal with if you get in your car and all of a sudden
how do you deal with it? That's another conversation. But that's annoying. If anything is the right word, annoying. And I really like the really bare bones, simple line summing, manual, kind of just get it done. You know what I mean? Mix it. All right, let's go.
Think of the money that you're saving. You're not spending $300 and something to buy a separate external device to do it. It's built into the amplifier, just like the LC2Y is built into the amplifiers as well. That's almost a $200 value right there. So when you really look at the value of those amps, and take out all these modules you'd normally have to get, I mean, geez, you're the amplifier's almost free.
Right, exactly. All in one chassis too, so less wires, less install, less, and more on the performance side. Dave, putting up the numbers once again. If you're looking at audio control products in Canada, Gemsen is the place you need to call. Check them out at gemsen.com. There's the digits, or hit Dave up on Facebook and Instagram. He loves that. Ready?
Absolutely. Reach out to us. We'd love to bring you on board. There's an audio control product for every dealer out there.
You got it. Thanks for your time today, Dave. It's a good one. Talk to you soon.
Ben.
Take care. And there you have it. That's audio control amplifier breakdown, top to bottom. Shout out to Matt Palumbo, their trainer, for joining us today, and of course Dave for setting that all up. If you're looking for some amplifiers, man, audio control I think has got you covered. Some really unique points, some really unique features, and something I would definitely recommend you take a closer look at. That's it. We'll be back on Wednesday with the double whammy. We're going to be on Connected at noon, and then with Fortin, actually, and then we're going to be in the evening with CMA Live, where we talk about more DSP fun. And that's that. And once again, I can't say it enough. If you missed some of the trainings that went down at workshops, go back to our website, CanadianMobileAudio.com/workshops. And you'll find links to get to all the videos from all 7 days, all available on demand. That's it for now. Thanks for tuning in to a CMA Connected presented by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.